Welcome to Legend Makers, the podcast where education's true heroes take center stage.
Shine like a ray from the sun. There's something people look for but never can find.
And here we are today, the Legend Makers podcast, back with Cran Middlecoat out of Brisbane, Australia.
Brisbane, Australia, and the land down under.
The land down under. So it's evening here. And what's it like tomorrow? Because you're tomorrow for me, aren't you?
Oh, well, beautiful day.
Tomorrow's a beautiful day, isn't it?
Tomorrow's a beautiful day here.
I love it. I love it. Well, Cran, it's good to see you. I've known you for quite some time. I've never met you personally, but you and I have had numerous exchanges. We met during the pandemic. I think that we just kind of connected. A lot of people were trying to find their way, and you and I found each other. And I think we've become good friends, even though we've never met personally. But I have a lot of respect and admiration for you. Your story is incredible. We're going to talk about it today. But it's good to see you, my friend. I haven't talked to you in quite some time, so I'm really excited to get into this with you.
Likewise, mate. Really looking forward to this one.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. So, I know all about you, and there are many people that do know all about you. But for those that don't know you, tell us who is Cran Middlecoat? What are you all about?
Oh, I'm just this Australian who loves inspiring young people. So It dates back. Yeah, we've all got to. We all need to have our why, don't we? And I love being that person I wish I had when I was younger, because, you know what I do. I'm a retired airline pilot, been flying airplanes for 30 years. I started when I was 14. I used to take my teachers from school flying, and ended up going out, spending a lot of time in Outback Australia, going into the airlines, flew the big jets on international routes, and I was absolutely loving my job. Ready to become a captain. I don't know if this is just a podcast as audio, but if you see the visual, you can see I've only got the 3 bars on my shoulder.
Yeah, we'll be doing video on YouTube so people can check you out there and all your stripes and your bars. Those are cool.
So the bars, I got 3 stripes. I'm a first officer. I was ready to become a captain and get that 4th stripe, and then I was diagnosed with cystic brain disease, which is a lesion. It was about the size of an almond growing deep between the hemispheres of my brain. And initially, doctors weren't that worried about it. But then it got really aggressive. It grew 11 millimeters in 6 months. So in 2020, just before the pandemic hit, if 2020 wasn't bad enough, I had a part of my skull removed. I had surgeons go in there and drain this lesion. It was so deep in my brain, I had to be given a drug that shrank my brain. And so that was a really great start to 2020 with recovering from brain surgery. And the horrible thing with that was I've suffered some brain damage from that surgery, which means I'm not allowed to fly airplanes anymore, which is absolutely crushing. My dad was a pilot. My granddad was a pilot. We just love flying. And that one thing, I absolutely loved going to work. You know, to give you some idea, I remember being on holidays from flying. And I remember, a week or 10 days into the holidays, thinking, I'm really looking forward to getting back to work because I miss it so much. And then to have that taken away from me was really, really hard. And so I had to rebuild myself. I had to find a new why. And it's turned out I can be that person for young people I wish I had when I was their age, inspiring the next generation of aerospace professionals and aviators.
Cool. I mean, not cool what you went through, but cool what you're turning it into. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a shortage and a need for pilots, especially commercial pilots. But I understand that it's an absolutely lucrative position if you can get into it.
Oh, look, I don't do it for the money though, mate.
Oh, I understand, but I think about like where jobs are going. And I mean, like for young kids to inspire them into aviation, it's a heck of a career pathway, I think, isn't it? If you can get a young guy, young gal pumped up about aviation and wanting to ultimately get their stripes as well. It seems like it seems like that's an overlooked career opportunity for a lot of people. It doesn't follow a traditional education pathway.
Well, I think a lot of people, it's not known. It
that's
just
right.
Put in a too hard basket. And high school careers guidance counselors are guilty for that too. Not that they can really be blamed because there's just not that much information out there. And that's where I come in, where I speak at high school assemblies and talk about aviation careers. But my real lane is giving young people these tools of resilience. Mm-hmm. life's going to kick you really hard sometime. It really is. And we're so hooked up in, working out. My pet hate, okay, this is a bit of a tangent. My pet hate in the education system is why are we still working compound fractions? Why do we need to multiply 9 11 16ths by 4 and 3/8? The decimal's a really good idea. Yet we're wasting so much time on that, but we're not talking about these life skills.
Yeah.
The life skills that these young people need.
Yeah.
That's my mission, is to share those life skills that have got me through the really tough times.
Yeah.
And share those with the young people I influence.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that happened in 2020, right before the pandemic. So how long? We seem to have connected then rather shortly after that. It seems to me that we were like, when did this all happen? In like January, February,
Yeah.
like right in that time frame?
6th of January that happened.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was through that other Australian legend, Gavin McCormick, that you and I.
Yeah. Aha. Is that the connection?
I think you better have him if you're not already. Better have him on your podcast if you haven't already.
What a score, Gavin, if you're listening, buddy. So Gavin and I tried this really cool experiment. Do you remember when we tried to fly over Philly with my drone and live stream it? Do you remember that during the pandemic?
I live streamed a rocket launch as well.
Yeah. I was there watching it. We tried all kinds of cool stuff, didn't we? Like, so you used to launch rockets and stuff with kids. That's how I remember you. And
Very much STEM education focused by launching rockets. And I wanted to emphasize that recycling, repurpose, sustainability. So I ended up going down the world of using soft drink bottles to launch water and air propelled rockets. And there's a lot of science in that. Another main reason I wanted to do that is I discovered that children explosives, technically motors in even small rockets are a classification of explosive. I discovered that school children, explosives and public liability insurance didn't mix particularly well. So I had to find another way. And then, water and a compressed air and a soft drink bottle, and we had rockets flying. And these kids got to build them themselves. That was cool.
And that's cool. And I think that goes back to what you were just talking about in terms of resilience and perseverance. So, okay, explosives don't work. Oh, water and compressed air or whatever. So there's always another way, right? Like that maze that we navigate through life, you're going to bang into some walls and you turn around and you go back this way and you find another pathway to get you where you want to go, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I love your graphic that you throw up every month or so with the difficulty graphic.
Yeah. Out of your the comfort zone.
The comfort zone, the fear, get out of the comfort zone. Right.
Yeah. What's out? That's it. Everyone says you've got to get out of your comfort zone. What's outside? Okay, what do you go out there, what do you expect to see? The first thing you got to do is be really scared. It's the fear zone. That's the zone you go in. The moment you're out of your comfort zone, you're into the fear zone. That's the first one. All right. You're really unsure of yourself. You just want to, I really don't like this and want to go back to where it's safe. You push through that. You go through that fear zone and then you get to the learning zone.
And wait, how do you push through? Because I think, so to say this, and you're preaching to the choir here, right? You know me.
Yeah.
I want for the people that are listening. So you talk about this fear zone.
Yep.
And you say, push through.
Yep.
All right, well, great. A lot of people, I can hear it now. Easy for you to say, push through my fear. How does one push through fear?
Firstly, it's absolutely okay to feel uncomfortable.
100%.
It's absolutely okay. To a point, part of pushing through is getting comfortable with feeling uncomfortable.
And how do you do that?
By accepting it.
Uh-huh.
By accepting it and actually celebrating that fact, celebrating those feelings. They're good. You're in a good place. Rather than fearing the fear zone, embrace it. If you're in that point and you are feeling nervous, you're feeling unsure of yourself, you're lacking confidence, that's a good thing. Celebrate it. That means you're out of your comfort zone. Celebrate that fact. At the end of the day, after you've spent, I remember one times when I was doing type ratings on big jets, It's 6 months of training, and it's like jamming a year and a half of college or university into 6 months, and your head's spinning. There is just so much to learn. And at the end of the day, celebrate what you achieved. All right. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. And so celebrate that. You got it. You did that. And then take on the next day. You'll still be uncomfortable. But then there'll be a success. Celebrate those small wins. But I can also assure you, you'll be back in the fear zone. You'll start to creep into that learning zone, but success is never a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
It's never linear. It's back and forth. So you'll get into that learning zone, but then you'll regress. Okay. Again, that's normal. That's okay. That is absolutely okay. And celebrate the fact that you're in that thing. You're doing a good thing. All right. Staying in your comfort zone and not doing things, that's what you've got to be scared about. That's the danger zone, because nothing can be achieved. All right. Pushing through that means you've got to embrace it and celebrate the fact that you are in that fear zone.
So I think there's a couple of strategies to that, or a couple of mindset tricks, right? So it's funny, we're heading into the holidays. And I remember being a little kid. I don't know if that has anything to do with what I turned into, but there used to be those Rudolphs and the Christmas, New Year's, and all those little animated, stop action animated, the Rudolph show, and all those that used to come on TV. And we would wait all year for them, and we get on our pajamas and popcorn. And there was Santa Claus is coming to town. And there was a great scene in that. And I remember there was a song, because they were all musicals, right? Because it was like in the 70s and 60s. And I think even those might have been done in like the 50s. And the song was just put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking out the door. And I remember humming that song to myself. It was about the old wizard guy was scared of something.
Okay.
It was fear. And the fear was, I forget what he was afraid of, but Kris Kringle was like, dude, it's really, you just talked about your easy wins. Sometimes it's as easy as just putting that one foot forward. Yeah. And not overthinking. Don't look at the big hill. Don't look at the mountain. Don't think about the maze. Just think about the first step in front of you, right? And when you achieve that, you go, oh, that wasn't so hard. And you celebrate it, to get to your point, right? You celebrate that first step. That's an easy win. The hurdle is low. You want to make sure that in the beginning your hurdles are low, so that you build confidence in yourself and your ability. I took the first step, right? And then there's that other expression of what's the longest time in the world is the time between thought and action.
Yes.
And you know, it's that, I think Mel Robbins had the 5-second rule. I think she said, when you think of something, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, act. You have to act within the 5 seconds, or you won't. The chances are that you won't. And so it's that step can be paralyzing, right? That initial first step for a lot of people in the fear zone can be absolutely paralyzing. And it's that faith has to come into a bit of this, right? In yourself or whatever. And you step into that first step. And I think that's what you're talking about, is you've got this fear zone, and you need to celebrate these, because these will compound if you're consistent. Persistence conquers everything. If you can be persistent in taking one step, well, then now you're on your way to your second step. And those steps over time compound. And then you said something that I want you to talk about a little bit. The learning zone of where you were going. And I think about life like a video game. I've got a Miss Pac-Man in my basement, right? An old vintage Miss Pac-Man. And when you first start playing it, it's waka, 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 waka. And it's relatively easy. You're probably going to get eaten a couple times by the blobs, but pretty much you can get through that thing, and they move kind of slow, and you get it. And then it gets you to the next phase. But then there's like a level. So you've mastered this first level. It's, oh, I got this now. I'm cruising. And then it's doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. You go to the next one. And all of a sudden, those little blue dudes are moving faster. Yeah. And the dots are a little further apart. And you're like, whoa, whoa. My old strategy there ain't going to help me here. So I think we learned, but we stepped up back into fear. And we got to continue to push forward through that. And there's layers to this, right? You level up, and what that new level is going to challenge you again, because what got you here isn't going to get you there. I'm full of these little slogans and stuff, right? If you can't tell. Am I hitting this right?
I think so. And the other thing too is, well, actually, I've got to say this. It was Pac-Man for you. It was Nintendo Donkey Kong for me.
Donkey Kong ruled. I went up to
Another
the
little Nintendo Donkey Kong. I love that game. Yeah. Anyway,
the
and yeah,
barrels and
it
stuff.
steps up. The barrels, jumping over the barrels, and it gets tough. And and like I say, success is never linear, but it's never a straight line. And so what you do, you transition from the learning zone into that growth zone,
Mm-hmm.
but then that can lead to more learning. It can lead to that becomes your new comfort zone. All right, becoming comfortable but then there's always more to learn.
Yeah.
You get into that growth zone, then you go up to the next level, then you're back in the learning zone, and it's back and forth. And that's absolutely okay to do that all the time. That's just how it works. So having that learning zone, that
Agreed.
growth zone, and outside comfort, you will be uncomfortable. You're in the fear zone. Find yourself in that learning zone. All right. Celebrate the fact that you're in that learning zone and get to that growth zone. And again, you'll get there. You'll start to feel comfortable. Then there'll be a bit of a nudge, and then you'll be back into that learning zone. That's okay. That's how we learn. That's the process. All right. The other one you've got to remember along the line, another tool to getting through this is practice does not make perfect. I despise that saying with every atom in my being. I was taught that, and it's still taught today. It is the biggest lie in the history of mankind. Practice does not make perfect. I don't even believe. Stephen Hawking, arguably the most intelligent person to ever live, said perfection doesn't exist.
Right, and the pursuit of it will drive you mad.
Exactly. So forget about perfection.
But mastery exists.
Mastery exists, absolutely. But even that won't be perfect, and that's okay.
It's not perfect, but
I guarantee there is not one airline pilot on the face of the planet that comes close to perfection. And if anyone thinks they do, they're kidding themselves. And so practice doesn't make perfect, but practice does serve a very, very, very important purpose. What does practice do? I say practice creates confidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Practice creates confidence.
Well, I think it's preparation, and that is practice. So I've heard the expression that preparation, when you're prepared for something, why do you think training, practice, think about just war? I mean, Army, whatever. They routinely put themselves into training situations because they're prepared for the real encounter. Well, that's the same thing as practicing, right? It's the 10,000. It's Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, right? So when you think about the tipping point, that 10,000 hours leads to not perfection, but preparedness, which leads to confidence in your abilities. So I want to go back to something. So when we think about this podcast, largely it's teachers listening. So we're the Legend Makers podcast. I view teachers as those, and I lump you into this category with compliments. Is that I always like to understand, like you and I have in a weird way similar paths, in that we didn't start off working with children or education.
That's right.
I certainly didn't. I spent years in sales, working in like the life sciences space and marketing and advertising, and you were a pilot. But somehow we both find ourselves as adult men, older than I'd like to admit, men, working with younger children, with a purpose behind what we do, right? For different reasons. Different whys, one no less relevant than the other. You have a very powerful one, and mine is, I think, equally powerful. In that I ended up in a place that I wasn't happy with. You had a dream stripped from you. And so, but at the same time, both of us, I want to know why you decided to focus your attention on young people versus older people, who you could easily go out and speak to older people. And certainly I'm sure that you do, but you've chosen to focus on the younger people for a reason. Why is that?
I want to be that person I wish I had when I was young. That's
True.
really it. I just want to. I was
And
the
why? And why is that? So if I peel back the layer, like why do you want to be that person? What drives you?
because I didn't fit in. I didn't fit
Mhm.
in at school. I suffered horrendous migraines as a young man. As a boy, I was suffered, and so I was given a medication, and its side effect was a created hunger. So I was overweight. For
Okay.
basically, you look at my all my forefathers were like beanpoles. I was the first one to balloon out. It was ridiculous, and because it sorted out the migraines, however, it had its horrible side effect that it created this feeling for hunger, and so I was overweight. That made myself a target. I wasn't confident in myself. I I was just this nerd. Unless it had wings or propeller, I wasn't interested. That in
Mm,
itself is bad. But I really had a lot of trouble fitting in into the school scene. Both primary school and high school. I started to gain some confidence in high school, but definitely in primary school. And my motivation is that there is a young man right now sitting in school who is feeling exactly the way I was 35 years ago.
mhm.
Whose people are not believing in that young man. And that's my why. I want to believe in that young man. I want to show that young person that he or she, I'm sure there's definitely young women out there with similar feelings.
Sure, of
They
course.
are absolutely amazing and give them these tools of self-belief. And it does disappoint me that the world's education systems don't seem to prioritize that. So that's my mission. That's my
Yeah.
mission now is to give these young people these tools.
Did
And
you have anybody? Did you have anybody that did you as a because when I talk to other teachers, a lot of times I'll ask them, I've always asked them, why did they start teaching? And in many cases, it's because they had a great teacher that inspired them to want to do this. Did you have anybody in your life that, like you said, that one person did have an effect on me and I want to be that person to other people? Or no, was it the void of that? And you said, I don't want somebody to go through that like I did.
well, a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both.
Okay.
There's two really influential teachers. There was Mr. Kerr and Mr. Harsey, and I'd love to. It'd be so cool if they were listening to this podcast. They're Mr. David Harsey and Mr. Ian Kerr. They are both
Wouldn't that be
science and
cool?
maths teachers, and they. I remember going through primary school and just sort of wafting through passing subjects, not really putting any effort in, and we'll put it, enough effort in. And I remember getting to it's my first year of high school. I'm not sure what happens in the States, but when I went to high school, the first year of secondary was year eight.
Okay.
And I remember doing 6 months of high school maths, and there was none of this wishy-washy, fluffy, satisfactory. It was a fail. Bang. David failed. But that was it. And that was the best thing that man could have ever done for me. The
Yeah.
absolute best thing that man could have ever done for me because he gave me the reality check when I was young enough to make the changes to improve. And he failed me. And then Mr. Kerr in the same year offered free maths tutoring on a Tuesday lunchtime, which I took full advantage of.
Hmm.
And then by the end of year eight, I passed maths. And I those two teachers they were
Firm but fair.
and they were both approachable. I owe them a lot, Scotty. I really owe those two teachers a lot, and I've actually tracked them down. I took them out for coffee.
Did
Uh,
you?
I did. I
Oh
tracked down
yeah, cool.
and took him out for lunch, and same with Mr. Harsey, and that was some years ago now, but that
Yeah,
was really cool. I'm glad I did that.
I'll bet. I'm sure.
Yeah,
I think more people wish they would do that. That's pretty
yeah.
cool that you actually took the initiative to do that.
Yeah, and I think then that's something I'd love to see a primary school student who I inspire today. I'll get an email from them in 15, 20 years' time and say, hey, Cran, just want to let you know I've just got a job with Qantas. I'm a first officer on the A380 or something like that.
Yeah, you're
I
waiting
wouldn't
for
be,
that call, aren't you?
it's, what it's like. We're educated. You couldn't get any better than that, could you?
Yeah, right. No, it'd be
You could
amazing.
not get any better. And so that's why I do it. I just to plant those seeds of inspiration in the minds of young people. And it doesn't bother me if they end up being surgeons or, own
Whatever.
their own their own convenience store or they work in the sporting industry. I really don't. Just know that you can do whatever you want. Just don't believe anyone who says you can't.
Yeah, right. I agree with that, by the way.
Yeah,
You know, I do.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's cool. So, and then when I put this into context for so for educators, so that's true, and I think we share that with them. I like to say that I'm very happy that I fell into this profession because I get to meet a lot of teachers, and we share a why, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to help kids unlock their inner legend. I want to.
Yeah.
I believe. I I wish too. Now I did. I was sent away to a school, a place where I was surrounded by hard, tough, sometimes really tough, love and
Mhm.
discipline and expectations and accountability, and pushed me into really, really, really uncomfortable situations and forced me to do it. Right. I didn't have a choice. But there were a lot of men that, because I was kind of a punk and I needed that, right? There was the only way to get through this thick head was, with a chisel and a hammer. And so
You don't want to literally do that. I've been there. It was not fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't even think of that.
You don't want to go
I
there.
didn't even think of that. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that.
I
That's a good one. Yeah, but they really did. And so so we share that why. So you and I have that bond, and I think that's good for other teachers to hear that they have that admirable job. They are the ones. So then when I think about people, challenges and dealing with them, we touched on this a little bit when we first started off about, confidence, and we're also going to deal, just like I think airline. I'm looking at the planes behind you, which are really cool, by the way, and we'll maybe talk about those models. They're neat. But when we think, I've heard, and I guess I believe what I've heard and read is that there is a shortage of airline pilots.
Yes, there is.
And so great job opportunity. But I think we're going to suffer a shortage of teachers.
Yeah.
I keep hearing about this teacher exodus, and it concerns me because we need teachers. We need good teachers. We need good mentors and good life coaches. And I'd argue that teachers can become life coaches for a lot of students. One of the teachers I talked to just a few weeks ago, I asked her, we were talking about what advice she had for some teachers that were either thinking about entering or on the fence, or maybe even burned out and thinking about getting out.
Yeah.
And she said something really interesting to me. She said, you got to remember that for some of these students, they have some pretty rough home environments. They come out of some pretty tough lives, right? Like they have lives that maybe we can't even begin to imagine at home. And you may be that child's bright light in the day.
Yeah.
And so don't despair, because you may be that one person's star in the sky that they look forward to seeing every single day, whether or not they show it or not.
That reminds me of a story. I did a STEM presentation in this tiny little school up in southwest of Mackay in North Queensland here, and it was summer. I was hot. It wasn't that small a school, because I think 3 or 4 presentations with the rocket science. I was hot. I was tired. I'd had enough. I just wanted to get back to the place where I was staying, flake out in the air conditioning. And then there was this young man. His name was Cooper Gordon, and he was disabled. He was in a wheelchair, and he has an assistant that helps him in school. And this young man, he forgot about his assistant. He pushed this wheelchair straight up to him. He was going to launch this rocket, and he wanted to be the first there, and that was just made that day so worthwhile. And and I know you've seen it, mate. I know, you've seen days where kids are just lit up. You've really made a positive influence. And that day, I was so tired, ready to give up on it. Like, no, I wouldn't have given up on it, but I'd had enough for the day. But then you saw that smile, and it just reinvigorated.
Yeah, you've reached the exhaustion point, and I think lots of teachers can empathize with that. I mean, I got to tell you, God bless them. because
Yeah.
I've run some of my programs here and there. I don't run them often.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
It is
Like,
hard work.
it's hard work. It's
Yeah.
extremely fulfilling work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it, that's what feeds and drives the energy. But man, day in, day out, like imagine. So mine's cherry picked, right? So my experiences are completely cherry picked. It's like taking care of someone's baby, right?
Yeah.
It's like being a grandparent. I get to come in, have fun with the baby, and then give it back to the parents who have to deal with all the real
Yeah.
crap, literally and figuratively, right? And so, I think that's kind of like what I experience from my perspective. Is I walk into a classroom and I'm Jumbles the clown over here with like my drones and all this because I'm there for a day. And it's like,
Yeah.
of course, everybody's going to be nice and great. You got your little outliers that were the little Scotty Buells of the world, but
Yeah.
for the most part, you got spitting spitballs and stuff like that. But for the most part, you got the kids. They're like loving you. But a teacher has to come in on their worst days, bad hair days, bad life days. It's a daily thing, day in, day out. Not every day is great. And they push through, right? And so I can see where over years of that, coupled with like a lot of bureaucracy, policy, whatever, standardized testing versus life training, can just wear you down. And so I have a lot of empathy for those teachers that grind it out day in, day out. And I got a lot of admiration for people that willingly step into it.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I absolutely agree. There's two professions. There's teachers and there are nurses. They're two professions. I would say they have to be the two most underappreciated professions.
Agreed.
Yet, without teachers and nurses, the economy would stop. Okay,
Crazy, right?
if we've had airline pilot strikes here in Australia. It was hard to get around. It was a pain in the neck, but the economy kept going. The world didn't stop.
Right.
All right. Okay. You took away the teachers and the nurses. That's it. The world would come to a grinding halt. All right. And it would be an absolute mess. That's where I have the greatest admiration for teachers and nurses, because without them, society would not function.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with you. And so when we get back to then the advice, I think you and I also believe in a lot of this. I mean, I'm an optimist, right? And years ago, I made the decision, it's been about almost 7 years, where I was really hell-bent on living my life with purpose. I think I've been open about this. I was drinking too much. I wasn't present. I was floating around through life, and it ended me up where I deserved to be ended up, which was kind of lost and despairing. Like, where the hell am I in like early 50s? Like, what have, and it wasn't, look, from the outside in, everybody be like, wait a minute, you've got it made. You got a nice home. You live in the suburbs. You got a nice son, a beautiful wife. You got it all made. Man, Scott's got the dream. But inside, I was like, ugh, this isn't where I want to be. Not those things, but just in general, like my career and my financial position and my drinking. I was like, I can't stand who I am. Right. And I remember just waking up one day and going, enough, like enough is enough. And then when I went sober, which I think a lot of people that go sober do, you all of a sudden find clarity after the first few weeks and then months and then into your first year. And you go, the amount of time and the amount of my life I've wasted staring into the bottom of a bottle when I had such potential to do, hell, if I could be that addicted to that, I can be addicted to the good stuff. Right. And
absolutely.
And so I look at these, and I think so. I guess my point of saying that, and I kind of lost my train of thought, but I mean, the point of saying that is that purpose, you only get one time, right? I'm listening to these books right now. I read this book. called The Daily Laws by Robert Greene. And he's the guy that wrote the 48 Laws of Power. And this book is daily meditations, 366 meditations on power, seduction, mastery, strategy, and human nature. And essentially, it follows. You can pick it up and start with January. And each month is a theme, and each day is a law, a meditation. And so, look, January 12th, the obstacle is the way, right? Well, I'm reading now in December, it's the cosmic sublime. And the cosmic sublime is understanding your mortality in this vast universe. I'm going to get pretty metaphysical people and stuff, but realizing that we are ultimately kind of insignificant but miraculous all at the same time. In other words, you're a mere speck, and you're going to flame out in historical terms in like a microsecond. But at the same time, you also have to appreciate that you're part of this big, beautiful, wonderful thing and miracle that is existence. Like the fact that we all exist is kind of almost impossible. It's hard to fathom, right? If you think about the strings, and I take all that to heart. As I've gotten older, I start to feel the finiteness of life. Believe it or not, at 58 years old, I'm actually starting to feel like, because I can count in days and months and years and go, that was 40 years ago. And I remember that like it was yesterday. And I may not have that many left in me. And so it drives me. It really drives me to try to do big, amazing, incredible, cool things and live with purpose. So what does that all mean? I don't know. I really don't know why I went on that tangent, but for those, you tell me what you think, because this is your interview, right? I'm talking to you. If you are thinking about entering into teaching, or you're starting out, or you're burned out, what would you say? I mean, I know you're not quote unquote a formal teacher, but what would you say to those people? What advice would you have?
I mean, we've covered a bit of a spectrum there of teachers just starting out, or teachers that might be burnt out. And I think the days of us all having, we finish high school, we go to college, we get qualified, and we go out and we do that job. And that's the job we do until we retire. Those days are long gone. It's okay to find a different why. Pardon me. And I mean, I was going to fly. I was going to be a pilot. I was going to, retire at 65. The fire trucks were going to come out. I was taxiing the airplane in. They were going to do the water arch as I taxied under it, like they do when pilots retire. That was all going to happen. Anyway, it never did. Which was that, and that's a shame. But I had to find a new why. And your why has to motivate you. And sometimes, if it's costing you your peace of mind, the price is too high. You've got to find a new why. And that's where I found, I think it's just the fact that there was so few people engaging in my passion, which was aviation and aerospace. And that's fine. It's a small industry in comparison to the population. As a result, no one talks about it. So I saw this opportunity where I could go and share my story and share that. And when I speak at a school, I don't just speak to students. It's tools which the teachers can take and implement into their lives. And
tell me about that. So what do you talk about when you go to a school? So if I want to bring Cran Middlecoat into my school, what do I get? What am I going to hear?
I love sharing stories. You're young, anyone engages with a story. And the story I have when I was lying in intensive care after my brain surgery, and then I tried to walk for the first time. And incidentally, that was my post on LinkedIn yesterday. My legs didn't work. I looked down and the brain was sending messages to my feet, and my feet weren't working. And the best I could do was this little tiny shuffle, and I could get going. And so sharing those stories, because that's through those stories and through those experiences, I developed these tools. And it's those tools which I share to the students. My big one is practice does not make perfect. Don't ever aim for perfection. All right. Practice creates confidence. And I share these tools and associate them with really fun stories. Aim for progress, not perfection, because you'll always achieve progress, but perfection is unattainable. It's simply unattainable. All right. You might get to what you thought was perfection, then it won't be. And you'll start looking for everything that's wrong rather than celebrating what you got right. So you have these tools. And the zones, we've spoken about those, all right? Because we talk about comfort zone, but no one knows what to expect outside the comfort zone aside from feeling uncomfortable. And that's good. It's a good thing. And going through those. And I love sharing and keeping the stories funny. You've got to get. And it's like early on in my career, you want to talk about being outside the comfort zone? Well, I'll tell you what, I was so far out of my comfort zone this day. I was in my early 20s. I was flying small 6-seater aeroplanes in Outback Australia, in actually the northwestern part of Australia, in the Kimberley region. And I was a new pilot, new kid on the block. And so I got the jobs nobody else wanted. And it was a really sunny Saturday afternoon. I got to work and there was myself and 2 other pilots. And I discovered we were going to a funeral. We had to take some family members, being remote area Australia, it's very spread out. 2 aeroplanes had to take family to the funeral. Third aeroplane, the aeroplane I was flying, became a flying hearse.
Okay.
I had to take the coffin and the body in my aeroplane. Now, bear in mind, I'd never even really been to a funeral ever. And yet here I am flying with this, dearly past right beside me. And, you want to talk about comfort zone and being in the fear zone. I'll tell you what, that was a really interesting day. Because it gets worse. They play this practical joke on the new pilot. And because this is actually quite a common thing I discovered now, flight doing what we call coffin runs. And you see, because the body had been delivered fresh from the morgue, it hadn't decomposed at all. And there's still air in the lungs. And high school physics tells you, as you climb into altitude, the air pressure drops. And so the air in the lungs starts to expand. So you're flying along, and all of a sudden this coffin goes, because the air goes over the larynx, because the larynx still works, it's still intact. So this dead body.
Wait a minute. So can you actually see the body?
No, it's in a coffin, but
it's in a coffin, but you hear it?
And depending on where the air's trapped, you can also let go at the other end. And I'm telling you, that's this hilarious practical joke that playing the new pilot, because he doesn't know. And then you get out there and that wakes you right. And the worst thing, if they make you do this at night.
So it's kind of terrifying in a weird way, right? Or just completely bizarre and surreal, right?
But this hilarious practical joke you play on the new and that was me that day. So I was a fair way out of my comfort zone that day.
Uh-huh.
If I wasn't prepared to do those jobs, there was nothing dangerous.
Yeah, right.
So it was absolutely safe. It was just really out there.
That's crazy.
And if I wasn't prepared to get out of my comfort zone and do those jobs, there was plenty of other pilots who would have done.
Who would have done it?
And they would have taken on those jobs. They would have got the hours, and they would have.
So they put you on the coffin run. That's what that's called?
Yeah, that's what we call
it. Oh, wow. All right. So note to self, no coffin run, right? Yeah, you don't want to do the coffin run. Or maybe you do want to do the coffin run for just the experience, right?
I mean, like I say, there was nothing unsafe. The airplane was serviceable. There was nothing dangerous about what I was doing. It was just weird compared to what I normally do.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Cool. Well, that's wild. That is wild. So let's do this. So as I typically leave, I always like to leave on a high note, right? I like to leave people with a dose of optimism. And that was a funny story we can send out with that. I mean, I think having a cadaver release air out the back while you're flying, how high up are you? You're up there. What are you up around? What?
1,000, 3,000 feet, something like that.
3,000 feet. And you're in that little cockpit in a 6-seater. Little thing,
tiny 6-seater,
fine thing. That's crazy. So I like to leave on a positive note. I like to go and think about, like, again, you and I don't know, optimists. You have to be. if you continue to move forward and you're trying to, better yourself, I like to look at the world half full.
Yep.
I like to see the good in things. There's something to learn out of everything, right? And so I always try to find the optimism. And so, I mean, look, again, this is typically what I would ask a teacher, like, what about education are they most excited about or optimistic about? But let's just put it into context of like, when you think about the future and youth. So think about the students that you speak with, these young children. What about the world today? What do you see in the world, or what do you see in those students that gives you hope? Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Look, I'd love to see young people shun social media. Look, there is some horrible stuff out there. Don't believe it all. But just bear in mind, we've got some of the most amazing technology. Just look what Elon Musk did a couple of months ago, or a few weeks ago, actually, capturing Starship. We are living in such an amazing, innovative time. We really are. Be excited about this technology. All right? We all have this negative cognitive bias. We all expect the worst, and sometimes you have to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But we are living in a really exciting time. And like this technology, I mean, but when you and I grew up, did you ever imagine having one of these?
Heck no.
What is it?
You couldn't have even begun to comprehend one of these phones in your hand.
No, you
just if you could have gone back to me in 1985, I'm 19 years old.
I was 5.
I'm an old man. I told you I'm an old man, dude. But imagine that. Handing a 19-year-old in 1985. I mean, there was no internet. There was no cell phone.
Yeah.
There was no, I don't even think my apartment at night, I was on my own at 19. I don't even think we had a phone.
Yeah.
Like, we just bounced around and found each other. It was weird. And so, this is at home, I had a phone, but my own apartment at 19, I didn't have anything. I had I don't even think we had forks. So, I think we were just like, we just grubbed for food wherever we could find it. I think if our girlfriend bought like a hoagie, I live near Philly, right? So I say hoagie. And I think we would just like look and see if they would give us half. That was lunch. Like, please feed me. But yeah, no, I mean, honestly, these things, it's remarkable. And I agree with you. I talked to a teacher yesterday. She was phenomenal. Love her. Her pod's going to be killer. Ms. Dugan, she's kind of famous on TikTok. She's kind of blown up. She's really cool. But I talked to her yesterday, and I asked her that question, and she proceeded to tell me about, she gave her students, she's an English teacher, and she asked them to write kind of a dystopian narrative about something that they were concerned with or thinking about. And she said what came out of that was a lot of kids are dealing with what are the things that they are thinking about: artificial intelligence, robotics, technology was at the forefront, right? And so she said what she took positive out of this is what these kids aren't just blind to this stuff, is that they are aware of it, right? I think maybe older people are a little less, maybe a little more afraid of it, a little more biased against it, but these students understand what it is. They understand the potential threats of it if not managed properly. They also understand and they see the potential utility in it and what it can accomplish. So they think positive. And I think that is, I think the hope that I have for these young kids. I've got a 19-year-old boy, so he's not super young, but I see it in him too. He's not all bent out of shape over AI. And in fact, he could almost care less. It's like weird. He's like, hey, Dad, it's just like, and I'm all like, AI, it's the greatest. It's cool. It's wild. It's because I'm a tech freak, right? I love all this stuff. But, where do you see that? I mean, do you feel that these students are, I'm hopeful that we're entering into a phase where these kids are able to really embrace the kind of coolness that's ahead of them. I agree with you. So being my age, I said this to my brother the other day, who's like 14 months younger than me. I said, now we lived through some pretty neat stuff, right? We've lived through internet.
Yeah.
I've seen the advent of personal computers, right? I've lived it. I was a teenager in the 80s. I saw personal computing take root. I watched and got to live through the internet, the information age, the advent of the iPhone. And nobody saw social media coming, I don't think. But we did see connected devices in a weird way. We just didn't know how they'd be used. But what my son and the kids that are younger than him are going to see is going to be almost incomprehensible.
Yeah.
And
just be brave enough to accept it and be smart enough to discern it. It's not all truth. That's what I tell to young people now. Be brave enough to discern it. Just because someone says it doesn't mean it's right. Just because someone's offended doesn't mean they're right.
Right.
And just be discerning. That's the best thing I could share.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I think they've got an amazing future ahead of them. I honestly think that there's things that these kids are going to see that would blow our brains out, just blow me away. And I'm sad in a weird way that I won't get to see it. I got to see some cool stuff, but I'm also going to miss on some of the amazing stuff that we always thought about in science fiction, right? Like, to your point, watching SpaceX and that team capture that rocket that's the size of a skyscraper in those chopsticks was mind-bending. Hey, I'll even go a step further and talk about when we watched Ingenuity and Perseverance, the rover, go up to Mars. And the video, I remember being so amazed by the video because they had double feeds, right? They had a downward camera and an upward camera. Remember there was that white and red parachute that the NASA team had actually embedded a code in there that said, do dangerous, do bold things or something. It was like and somebody figured it out, the internet figured it out in like a matter of minutes. Like they were like, that was a code, there was a message in there. But what I remember vividly is watching that reverse camera looking up at the sky, and it was like the Martian sky. And I'm thinking, that's a planet that at that trajectory, the Perseverance had traveled, I think, 300 million miles to get to, right? Based on its course. And I remember thinking, yeah, dude, that's like Star Wars stuff, but it's real. Like, that's the Martian sky. And we're there. We got things there. It's just cool. I think they're going to see a lot of neat stuff.
I agree too. Yeah.
It's cool,
it's an exciting time to be alive.
Well, look, man, I love talking to you. What are you going to send us out with? Send us out with a note of positivity, man. Fill us up.
All right. The best thing I can say, and it doesn't matter whether you're in 6 years old in primary school, it doesn't matter if you're mid-high school, graduating high school, if you're about to retire, you're a career businessman, it doesn't matter. Don't ever, ever aim to be perfect. You'll never do yourself any justice. Aim for progress, not perfection. And remember that practice creates confidence.
So we practice at being good people, good things, doing what you want to do. I love it. We're going to find you on LinkedIn. We're going to link to you. We'll link to your website.
Fantastic.
Where else can people find you? So we've got LinkedIn, your website. Where else are you active?
Yeah, the two main ones. I do have a presence on Facebook and Instagram. My main presence for social media is on LinkedIn. So Cran Middlecoat, that pilot guy, is where you can find
pilot guy.
That
Cran Middlecoat, that pilot guy. I love it. And you ought to go give yourself a TikTok spin, man. See what you do over there. Get on the old talk, man. Try it out. All right. Well, listen, great talking to you, Cran, all the way from Australia. It's what, Wednesday morning for you?
Wednesday morning's just gone 10 a.m.
Wow. Cool. And it's going on 7:00 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States. All right, man. Good to talk to you, Cran. Good to see you, my friend. Take care, as always. Bye-bye.